Hello, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. We are all welcome once again to our Arabic grammar lessons with النحو الواضح. Inshallah, today we look at the topic نائب الفاعل. You look at the topic نائب الفاعل, and the topic actually is self-explanatory. And when you know the meaning of نائب, it becomes quite easy to understand the concept even without knowing the pieces involved in making up the topic. You get to understand, you get an idea. Yani when we say نائب, بمعنى ما ينوب عن الشيء أو من ينوب عن غيره. When we say نائب, we mean a vice, somebody who replaces another or something that replaces another. If you say ناب عنه, يعني he has replaced him. يعني كلما يسافر السفير ينوب عنه كلما يسافر الرئيس ينوب عنه نائب الرئيس. Whenever the president travels, his vice replaces him. So we have نائب الفاعل. We have the same concept too in Arabic grammar, where we have the الفاعل, and then also we have نائب الفاعل. We have the fa'il, the doer itself, and then we have the one that replaces the doer. How is this concept? Let's get into our amsila to clarify this idea. Now we have فتح الولد الباب. The boy opened the door. Now what we do is we just look at it right with its counterpart. And they all have counterparts like that. So we just look at them right with their counterparts as we move. We have فتح الولد الباب. The boy opened the door. And opposite it we have فتح الباب. Now we realize that the fa'il here, which was the al-waladu, does not come in here. The fa'il al-waladu does not come in here. We realize that the maf'ulun bihi originally, which is the al-baba, has taken the place of the fa'il, thereby taking its vowel also. The fa'il has been taken off, and then the maf'ulun bihi has been brought back to replace the position of the fa'il, and so it takes its dhamma. And you realize there is a change in the verb, which we will come to talk about. So we have fataha al-waladu al-baba. Now we have futiha al-babu. We can't have fataha al-babu again. No. The verb has to change for the maf'ulun bihi to become the fa'il. Okay. We have akala al-fa'aru al-jubna. The mouse has eaten the jubna, which is cheese. Cheese, C-H-E-E-S-E. The mouse has eaten the cheese. Now realize here that the fa'il is not mentioned in here. We have the verb changing also in the same rhyme line. Futiha, ukila, kusira, kutifa. So you realize that the verb changes in the same rhyme line whenever the maf'ulun bihi, the original maf'ulun bihi now replaces the fa'il. So you have ukila al-jubnu. The cheese has been eaten. Now you pay attention to the translation. You realize that the examples here, these ones are active voice, and then we have these ones being passive voices. The cheese has been eaten. The door has been opened. Now I have here كسرت الحرة الإناء. كسرت الحرة الإناء. The cat, al-hirra, which is the cat, has broken the container. Al-ina is the container. Now the cat is taken off. The fa'il is taken off, which is the doer. We have here kusira al-ina'u. The container has been broken. And then we have qatafat al-bintu az-zahrata. The girl plucked the flower. The girl plucked the flower. And now the girl, which is the fa'il, is taken off. Then we have the verb becoming kutifat, kutifat al-zahratu, kutifat az-zahratu. Now you notice something with me here. Whenever the maf'ulun bihi now becomes the fa'il and the verb changes its structure, the verb and the maf'ulun bihi that has become the fa'il, they still have to match in gender. You get it? Like the original rulings we took for Jumla Ismiya still applies. So when I say, even though we know that the fa'il here in al-hirratu is feminine, and so the verb came kasaratil hirratu al-ina'u, because the fa'il is feminine, the verb came feminine. But when we come to its opposite, when the fa'il is taken off and the maf'ulun bihi is made there to replace the fa'il, what do we see? We realize that the verb becoming masculine again. Kusira al-ina'u, because the ina is masculine, the verb has to be masculine. Still, they have to match in terms of gender. You don't say that, oh, the original fa'il was feminine, and so I'm still keeping it feminine, even though I'm making it in the passive voice. You don't do that. Okay. We come to the second part, which says, تجمع النملة الغذاء. تجمع النملة. النملة is the fa'il, which is the ant. The ant. A-N-T. The animal ant. The ant gathers the food. Al-ghidha'u. The ant gathers the food. Here we know the dua. When we come here in the passive voice, it says, yujma'u al-ghidha'u. Yujma'u al-ghidha'u. Yani, food is gathered. You see, the dua is not known. Yujma'ul ghidha'u, food is gathered or food is being gathered. Yarkabu Aliyun al-Hisana. Ali is riding the horse. Now we come here, Yurkabu al-Hisanu. The horse is being ridden, or the horse is ridden. The dua is not known. Says, Tahlubu al-mar'atu al-baqarata. Al-mar'atu is the fa'il here. In this passive voice, the mar'a is taken off. Then we have tuhlabul baqaratu. The cow is being milked. So here, the lady or the woman is milking the cow. But here, the fa'il is not known. Then we say tuhlabul baqaratu. The cow is being milked. And the milk is being taken from it. Halib is being taken from it. It says, tuhadhibu al-mu'allimatu al-binta. تهذب المعلمة. معلمة is the fa'il. تهذب المعلمة البنت. The teacher is kind of is nurturing the girl or giving her manners. She is disciplining the girl. The teacher is disciplining the girl. And then here we have تهذب البنت. The girl is being disciplined. The girl is being disciplined. Now, basically, before we get to the explanation, realize that there are certain things you should note. The verb format here changes when the fa'il is taken off. And when the verb format changes when the fa'il is taken off, the maf'ulun bihi comes to replace the fa'il. When it replaces it, it takes its vowel, which is raf'u. Originally, it was mansub. Now it has become marfu'. When it is the fa'il is not known and the maf'ulun bihi is made the fa'il, is the maf'ulun bihi the fa'il? Is it really the fa'il? No, it can't be the fa'il. The door can't be the one doing the opening. The door is opened. So the door is still somewhat maf'ulun bihi. It's still somewhat the object, but because the doer has been taken off, now it replaces it and takes its vowel. What do we call this maf'ulun bihi originally that has become the fa'il? What do we call it? We call it na'ibul fa'il, the replacer of the fa'il, or the replacement of the fa'il, or the vice to the fa'il, or the deputy to the fa'il, because it is taking its place, and so it has worn its cloth. Okay, so what happens is now we have this verb being called the na'ibul fa'il. This noun here becomes the na'ibul fa'il, and then the verb whose fa'il is not known is called mabniyun lil majhul. Mabniyun lil majhul. What do we mean? The verb has been built for somebody who is not known, because the fa'il is not known. Whenever you find a verb being twisted like this, because its fa'il is not known, to take it into the passive voice, we call the verb mabniyun lil majhul. Yani the verb has been constructed for a fa'il that is not known. Okay, if that is the name of this verb here, mabniyun lil majhul, what is the name of this verb here in the active voice? In the active voice, the verb is called mabniyun lil ma'lum. Mabniyun lil ma'lum. Yani the verb has been built for a doer that is known. You can easily realize the difference from ma'lum, yani known, and majhul, not known. So when you have an active voice where there is a verb, the fa'il, and the maf'ulun bihi, the verb is mabniyun lil ma'lum, and then you have the fa'il and you have the maf'ulun bihi. When you have a passive voice like this where the maf'ulun bihi has now taken the place of the fa'il, the maf'ulun bihi is called na'ibul fa'il and not the fa'il. And then the verb is called mabniyun lil majhul. Now with this known, of course the changes you can just realize it. In the past tense, the first letter is given dhamma and the last letter is given fatha. So fataha, futiha. Or let's say the first letter is given dhamma, the last but one letter is given kasra. That is the ruling. So you have fataha becomes futiha. You have akala becomes ukila. You have kasara becomes kusira. Qatafa becomes kutifa. So the first letter is given dhamma, and then the last but one letter, the letter before the last, is given kasra. So dhamma and then kasra. When you come to the present tense, almost the same thing. Or you realize that the first letter is given dhamma, and then the last but one letter is given what? Fatha. 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 Here it was kasra, dhamma and kasra. Here it was dhamma and kasra. Here we give dhamma and the last but one takes fatha. So you have tajma'u being yujma'u, yarkabu being yurkabu, tahlubu being tuhlabu, tuhadhibu being tuhadhabu. Okay, so with that known, we are going to quickly read the al-bahth. If all explanation has been done, after that, what do? You come to do i'rab, inshallah. We have البحث. انظر إلى الأمثلة الأربعة الأولى من القسم الأول. Look at the first four examples. Look at the four examples in the first category. He's talking about these ones here. Okay. وتجد أن كل مثال يشتمل على فعل ماض وفاعل ومفعول به. You realize that every example, each example contains first of all a fi'l madi, and then it contains a fa'il, and then it has a maf'ulu bihi. It has a maf'ulun bihi. That is the active voice. You have the fi'l, you have the fa'il, and then you have the maf'ul bihi. ثم وازن كل مثال منها بالمثال الذي أمامه في القسم الثاني, and then compare the examples, compare each example with the example that is opposite it. أيوة بالمثال الذي أمامه في القسم الثاني. So you compare these sentences, the ones here, you compare them to these ones. So you compare فتح الولد الباب with فتح الباب. That's what he wants us to do. ثم وازن كل مثال منها بالمثال الذي أمامه في القسم الثاني. تجد أن المعنى متحد. You find that the meaning is connected, is unified. في كل مثالين متقابلين. In every two opposite examples, in every two meeting examples, like the فتح الولد الباب and the فتح الباب, you realize that the meaning intersects. وتشاهد في أمثلة القسم الثاني أن الفعل الماضي حدث تغيير في شكله. And تشاهد يعني you witness in the examples in the second partition that need a passive voice where you have the futiha, ukila, you realize that أن الفعل الماضي, that the past tense, حدث تغيير في شكله. There is a change in its shakl, yani in its vowels. There is some changes there, as I've already indicated. فالحرف الأول منه صار مضموما. The first letter of the فعل الماضي has now become مضموما, has now taken ضمة. والحرف الذي قبل آخره صار مكسورا. And the حرف that comes before the last, يعني the last but one letter, صار مكسورا, has now taken كسرة. Just what I said. يعني صار الفتحة هنا صار الفتحة هنا ضمة. يعني الفاء هنا كان عليه فتحة ثم صار هنا يحمل ضمة. Okay, that is what he is telling us. والتاء هنا يعني الحرف الذي قبل الحرف الأخير كان مفتوحا ثم هنا صار مكسورا. That is what he's trying to tell us. يعني the first letter has now taken ضمة, the last but one is taking كسرة. وأن الفاعل حذف, and you realize that in the passive voice the فاعل has been deleted, it has been taken off. أي تجد أن الفاعل حذف وناب عنه المفعول به. This is very important. يعني حذف الفاعل ثم ناب عن الفاعل ثم ناب عن الفاعل مفعول به. يعني المفعول الذي المفعول الأصلي الآن صار هو الفاعل. فأصبح مرفوعا. And so when the مفعول became the نائب الفاعل, replaced the فاعل, it has now become مرفوعا بعد أن كان منصوبا. Even أصبح مرفوعا بعد أن كان منصوبا. It has now become مرفوع when before it was منصوب. مفعول به we all know is منصوب. Now it has become the نائب عن الفاعل, and so it is taking the فاعل. Less like when the vice president takes the position of the president, he carries the power of the president. Just like when in parliament the speaker of the parliament is not there and somebody replaces the speaker, the person picks the authority of the speaker of parliament. It happens in any place. When there is no teacher in class and the teacher asks somebody to replace him, he delegates somebody to replace him. The same authority given to the teacher is supposed to be given to the person replacing him. And so if fa'il is dhamma, is marfu, and maf'ul is now taken off and maf'ul bihi is replacing it, the maf'ul bihi is also being given the raf'u to carry the authority of the fa'il. أيوه. وإذا وازنت الأمثلة الأربعة الثانية في القسم الأول بما أمامها في القسم الثاني, يعني if you compare the 4 examples in the first partition to the opposite examples, يعني they are also 4, the opposite are also 4. رأيت أن كل مضارع في القسم تغير شكله. You realize that every present tense, and we are now down to the fi'l mudari. You realize that every present tense in the first example, in the first category, when you look at it in the second group, يعني every present tense here, تجمع, يركب, تحلب, تهذب. When you look at it here, يجمع, يركب, تحلب, and تهذب. You realize that what happens? You realize that في القسم تغير شكله. You realize that its شكل has changed. يعني its vowel has changed. فصار أوله مدموما. Its first letter has now taken ضمة, just like the ماضي. والحرف الذي قبل آخره مفتوحا, and the حرف before its last letter, the last but one letter, is taking فتحة. When we talked about the past tense, we said the last but one letter takes what? كسرة. But with مضاري, with the present tense, the last but one letter takes فتحة. ورأيت أيضا أن الفاعل حذف, and you realize that the فاعل has been deleted. وناب عنه المفعول به, and the مفعول به has replaced it. فصار مرفوعا بعد أن كان منصوبا, and then the مفعول به becomes مرفوع when in the past it was منصوب. هذا المفعول به الذي أصبح مرفوعا في أمثلة القسم الثاني جميعها يسمى. This مفعول به in the first category that has become مرفوع, which was مفعول به that was originally منصوب in the first category, that has now become مرفوع in the second category. All of them, every such maf'ul bihi that replaces a fa'il and becomes the replaces the fa'il is called na'ibul fa'il, as I've already indicated in my explanation. Becomes the na'ibul fa'il. وإذا تأملت الأمثلة الرابع والسابع والثامن, and if you should ponder over the fourth, seventh, and the eighth examples, fourth, seventh, and eighth examples, علمت بالبداهة, you know automatically أن نائب الفاعل إذا كان مؤنثا كان الفعل مؤنثا أيضا. You realize easily, you realize by just intuition, when you look at it, you realize automatically أن نائب الفاعل, that the نائب الفاعل إذا كان مؤنثا كان الفعل مؤنثا أيضا. If the نائب الفاعل is feminine, the verb is also feminine, just as I indicated. But he's calling our attention specifically to يركب علي الحصان, and then let's look at this. تجمع النملة الغذاء. The namla made the fi'il تجمع feminine, but when now al-ghidha has become the naib al-fa'il, you see yujma'u and not tujma'u. The fi'il has now become mudhakkar, not mu'annas as it was. It has to change to reflect whoever is doing the function of the fa'il. When you look at tahlubu, then you come here tuhlabu al-baqaratu, tuhadhabu al-muallimatu al-bintu. Al-bintu is feminine, and so it keeps the tuhadhabu being feminine. Okay, Jamil. Let's come to the al-qaida, al-qawaid as well. He says, na'ibul fa'ili, this is the definition. ما هو نائب الفاعل? If you are asked, نائب الفاعل هو اسم مرفوع حل محل الفاعل بعد حذفه. The نائب الفاعل is a verb, is a noun that has taken the place of the doer. It's a noun that is also marfu, that takes the place of the fa'il. حل, to land. محل, حل محله, يعني it has taken its place. أنا خرجت فحل محلي أخي. I went out and my brother took my place. So he says it is اسم مرفوع حل محل الفاعل بعد حذفه. It is a nominative noun that takes the position of the fa'il after the fa'il is deleted. These definitions are supposed to be memorized or understood very well, such that with your little Arabic, when somebody asks you what is the na'ib al-fa'il, you can easily define it just from understanding. He says, إذا أسند الفعل إلى نائب الفاعل وكان ماضيا, if a fi'l is linked to نائب الفاعل, not the fa'il, is linked to نائب الفاعل, and it is fi'l ماضي وكان ماضيا, what happens? ضم أوله, the first letter is made ضمة, وكسر الحرف الذي قبل آخره, and the last but one letter is made كسرة. وإن كان مضارعا, and if it is فعل مضارع, what happens? ضم أوله, his first letter is made ضمة, وفتح الحرف الذي قبل آخره, and the letter before its ending is made مفتوحا, يعني is given فتحة. Regardless whatever letter it was taken before, it will be given فتحة if you want to create the passive voice of the verb. والفعل الذي يحدث فيه هذا التغيير, and the verb which these changes happens to, and the verb to which these changes happens is called يسمى مبنيا للمجهول, as I indicated. You need to know these details. مبنيا للمجهول. إذا كان نائب الفاعل مؤنثا, if the نائب الفاعل is مؤنث, is feminine, كان الفعل مؤنثا والعكس صحيح. If the نائب الفاعل is feminine, the verb should also be feminine to match it. If the نائب الفاعل is masculine, the verb should now become masculine to also match it. In summary, what do you need to know about this topic? There are basic things that you need to know. The topic is نائب الفاعل. When we say ناب عنه, ناب عنه يعني it has replaced him. So when we say نائب الفاعل, the replacement of the fa'il or the replacer of the fa'il. What do we mean by the replacer of the fa'il? The replacer is originally a maf'ulun bihi, is the object in a verbal sentence. And now the fa'il has been taken off to create a passive voice. And so the object, the original object now becomes the doer, becomes the replacement of the doer. And so you need the term na'ibul fa'il, you understand it. You need to understand that you have a jumla fi'liya made of fi'il, fa'il, maf'ulu bihi. That is an active voice. In the passive voice, the verb, you have just the fa'il, you have just the fi'il and the na'ibul fa'il. The na'ibul fa'il, which we've said is the original maf'ulu bihi, that has now become the fa'il. The na'ibul fa'il is also marfu'. It is part of the marfu'at al-asma', nouns that are marfu'. Or it takes dhamma also. But when we have a passive voice, what happens to the verb? If it is past tense, you give the first letter dhamma and then you give the last but one letter kasra. If the verb is in the present tense, you give the first letter dhamma and then you give the last but one letter fatha. And the verb that is in the active voice, yani a verb, fi'il and the maf'ul bihi, a verb, the doer and the object, in such a verb is called, the verb in the active voice is called fi'ilun mabniyun lil ma'lum. The verb in the passive voice is called fi'ilun mabniyun lil majhul, as indicated in the text. Okay. So in i'rab, basically for active voice we know it. فتح فعل ماضي مبني على الفتح لا محل له من الإعراب. الولد فاعل مرفوع وعلامة رفعه الضمة الظاهرة على آخره. الباب مفعول به منصوب وعلامة نصبه الفتحة الظاهرة على آخره. We come to the passive voice. فتح الباب. فتح فعل ماضي مبني للمجهول لا محل له من الإعراب. You can keep it like that. الباب نائب الفاعل. Don't mistakenly say فاعل. نائب الفاعل مرفوع وعلامة رفعه الضمة الظاهرة على آخره. Okay, so basically that is that for this lesson. Please, if there is any question, any clarification you want, you might have also made a slip of tongue, you are free to correct us. In recording like this, a lot of things happen, a lot of mistakes happen, you don't realize. So if anybody realizes anything that I might have mistakenly jumped, mistakenly explained it wrongly, please call my attention to it. Let's clarify everything. Do well to share with brothers and sisters to also benefit from this series of lessons. And always keep us in your prayer for Allah to take away from the path or hurdles such that we can have a free flow of lessons till we finish with the book. May Allah grant us beneficial knowledge. Do well to share with brothers. If you've not subscribed, do well to subscribe inshallah. Till we meet again, have a very good Arabic time. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.